Welcome back and thank you for keeping it NTV and welcome to Talk of the Nation. Now this coming weekend, schools are scheduled to open for second term. Recently, the Education Minister, Janet Museveni, had appealed to schools not to raise tuition fees even in the midst of the rising cost of living. It also comes at a time when the Health Ministry is also allowing for vaccination of learners between the age of 12 and 18 years against COVID-19. So tonight, would like to find out how schools plan to proceed in the second term. And to help us appreciate this, we have Professor Mohammed MPEZAMIHIGO, who is the Vice-Chancellor at Kampala International University, as well as a school owner. He's going to be joining us live on Zoom. Good evening, Professor, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, and good evening to our viewers. Thanks a lot for hosting me.
Yes, so we asked, how are school heads dealing with the call not to increase tuition fees amidst the increase of the cost of living? Do you think this is very feasible?
I beg your pardon, can you please reset the question?
Yes, I'm asking that how are school heads dealing with the call to not to increase school fees in the times we are in with the increased cost of living?
Of course, as other members have commented in the news bulletin, I would like to say that definitely it's a very, very big challenge. We need to accept that there are some realities in operations, and so schools, the owners, the parents, other supporters and promoters of education institutions must find a way of surviving, because the concept of breaking even now, I think, is going to be a nightmare for quite a number. Remember, our viewers, that not every kid or pupil or student return to school because of one reason or another, particularly with the financial constraints. Now, with this additional burden of skyrocketing prices of everything, I think there's a challenge lying ahead. And so you will find a situation where probably owners are mainly going to take on additional loans from banks and other financial institutions. Some may even decide to actually get out of the business. Of course, we know education is not a business, not for profit, but for those who intend to make money, sorry, this cannot happen. And now it's tough, particularly we've seen pupils and parents trying to change and move their kids from one place to another. You can imagine they just completed term 1 and they're going in for term 2. Already they are switching because some schools have actually raised the cost, the fees charges. And also when you go into the market right now, it's incredible how people are going to manage to actually take back their kids to school.
Yes, in your view, Professor, do you anticipate this could replicate at the university level as well?
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying, in your view, do you anticipate that a situation like this could be replicated at the university level?
Of course, we all go to the same markets. Actually, it is even probably worse because the cost of higher education is definitely higher than cost of education for the lower levels. And so what you expect to see is a situation where parents are going to make a choice and actually delay the continuation of studies for some of their kids in favor of others. So now the issue is, do you decide to carry on with the kids who are in the lower levels of education in a family, or first take on this one who is at university and then continue to graduate so that they can, again, the challenge is a job ahead, the jobs there anyway. So it's a real big fix. And so the issue of opportunity cost is going to have a center role in the decisions that have to be taken. And we know at the university level that the dropout rates are very high. We are very high even at the beginning of the opening of the lockdown. In January, we had like between 25 to 40% non-return of students. And so in the event of this hardship, the economic hardship, we are likely to find a tougher situation. Now, the audience needs to know also, in Uganda this year, we do not have admissions at all, especially for direct entrance. Students who should have completed their A-level in February this year, we do not have until maybe October, November, and so you expect results next year. So other than the dropouts due to the financial challenges, we do have a big challenge of lack of students in the education institutions, and so this is going to have a multiplier effect as well.
Yes, Professor, let's talk about the lessons that we've learned from the first term. Do you think these will be carried forward to this coming term? And probably, is there something that you need to change?
I think my prediction is that we've been able to learn something from the reopening of education institutions and the guidance that we have received. I know that, for example, in different education institutions, I conducted some brief research. You find that some students discovered, the realities, of automatic promotion, for example. And now some parents have accepted, they are actually willing to take back some of their kids in lower classes. So that's one lesson learned. The second lesson is that some parents are willing to actually add in a few more resources to be able to support the enhancements, bridging and remedial interventions for their kids. Financially, what we have seen, quite a number of the professionals in the education sector have actually been very mobile. In a school, you'll find that teachers have actually crossed out, others have come in, they are switching. Some of them think that what they were doing is better. And so I think stability is likely to come towards the end of the year. That's when we will now have the reality. Maybe prices will have stabilized, or when the government intervenes in these high skyrocketing prices, then something may come out that may determine our continuity in the 2023 academic and financial year.
But the issue of teachers coping up with the new ways of teaching, coupled with the disciplinary issues among the learners.
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying let's talk about the issue of teachers coping up with the new ways of teaching, coupled with the disciplinary issues of the learners.
Yeah, of course. It's very interesting because, for example, for the secondary education, where government is implementing a new curriculum, secondary school curriculum, even the parents cannot easily interpret the report cards. So that's one area. And so my appeal would be definitely that because this is a new experience, of course, education institutions must invest in getting facilitators to try and reorient the teachers and all the staff in the education institutions to cope, because some actually, especially in the lower levels of education, kids have actually come back to school when their minds and behaviors have actually somehow sort of grown so fast. Some of them have been exposed to money, others have been exposed to all sorts of lives. At the higher level, university level is a little bit, I think, is quite not significant. What we see, of course, there are issues of pregnancies and change of decision in career path. That's what happens in the upper levels of education. In the secondary and the primary education, you will find that we have had a new experience where teachers are challenged by these kids. They know how to handle money. They know adult staff material. They also engage the staff in the school as though they have grown up, and it's a period of just 2 years. And I think this is where we need the psychosocial support, counseling and guidance, where education institutions must now mainstream these services, not only for kids and pupils and students, but actually for the teachers themselves, for the directors, for the parents who are confused up to now. We hope maybe term 2, term 3, or semester 2, semester 3, or trimester. These are going to be there are going to be some good improvements for the good of the education system in this country.
Okay, now, Professor, there have been calls for schools to start vaccinating these students that are aged between 12 and 18 years against COVID-19. How can this be done without raising too much resistance? How do you think this can be handled?
I'm sorry, I missed that bit again. Pardon me because of the environment.
Yes, yes. There have been calls that have been made to schools to start vaccinating students between the ages of 12 and 18 years against COVID-19. So in your view, how can this be done without, raising resistance?
I think the issue of vaccination is really critical. The question is, there has to be massive sensitization and reassurance of the public and the parents, because we've seen the jump in the vaccinated numbers here in Uganda, and this is a good sign that people have actually accepted vaccination. The dangers, the fears around it on the kids, especially at that age bracket, I think the reassurance must come from government side. And again, 1 or 2 cases or 3 cases that are expected may actually, outcomes that may be negative need to be exposed, need to be explained. Government must have a strategy. What if some kids react? What if there is a failure in one way or another of the vaccination exercise? That would be a very bad outcome for our country. Otherwise, I'm in favor of the vaccination. What is missing at the moment is for the public to be reassured, the parents to be reassured that nothing bad is going to happen, or we have data from other countries where this has taken place, and therefore it will be a success story rather than for members of the public to be pessimistic about it.
All right, Professor, in your parting shot, there are new ways of managing the learning environment where parents are still barred from visiting the school during, term time. How can this be managed endlessly?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Mildred. Sorry.
Parents being barred from visiting their students, because this is something that has been brought up as a way of managing the learning environment. How can this be handled endlessly?
I have missed the question actually, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay, just once again, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you please recast the question?
Yes, I was talking about the issue of, managing the learning environment where parents have been barred and stopped from visiting, during school term. So we are asking, how can this be managed endlessly?
How can this be done what?
Managed. How can this be managed endlessly? The issue of parents being barred from visiting their students in school.
Ah, right. Okay, visitations and so on. I think at the moment we can easily say that the community has gained some kind of immunity against COVID-19. COVID-19 hasn't gone away at all, and therefore one can easily assume that in the very near future, the government, the Minister of Health and the Minister of Education will work together to allow this to happen. Because look, our dear viewers, in this show, the issue is the kids have gone back to school, to their homes, and they are going to come back. So I think in one way or another, the Minister of Health can allow a phased acceptance, maybe a managed, where we comply to SOPs. And at the moment, parents are going to the markets, and even when they go to schools for academic guidance and so on, they still interact. So I think government may want to plan to let go of some of these restrictions, so that then we know we have a total integration, and therefore some very good immunity that has been realized in the community. This is my humble opinion, but of course they allowed sports to take place. A few other things, excursions and so on, may also be allowed in a phased manner, so that life can come back to normal, and this monster and scare of COVID-19 actually disappears out of our community.
Yes, Professor. Now, as we conclude, what would your advice be to school heads and teachers ahead of the second term reopening?
They should not take anything for granted. COVID-19 still exists. The schools and education institutions must still comply. We must observe as much as we can. And those who haven't done their vaccinations or completed their vaccination should do so immediately. But then we also have to advise, because we are in a financial crisis, heads of institutions, directors, and everybody else, this is the time for us to become more innovative, more creative. How do you cut down your costs? Because your expenditure is much higher than what you can generate out of the school. And so this is something that may lead to the collapse of so many institutions. Rather than think about how to generate more income, we should also be looking at cost-cutting measures as education institutions. And also, even if we decide to raise the fees and tuition, we should also be realistic enough and also discuss and sensitize the parents so that they understand that the additional contribution they are going to make, not in breach of the government regulation, but facing the reality, because the market prices do not understand the language of COVID-19. You know, that doesn't apply at all in our situation. So that's the message I give, and also ask government to continue to support the education institutions, because at the moment, everybody is running like below the operational line.
Well, thank you, Professor, so much for your time. And yes, to you, thank you so much for joining us for Talk of the Nation. We did have Professor Mohammed Mpezamihigo, who happens to be the Vice-Chancellor at Kampala International University, as well as a school owner. Now we take a break and return with more stories.